So, in this session, as the impacts of COVID continue to unfold across the European Union, we're going to take stock of its effects on regional disparities. We're going to discuss, as I said, how cohesion policy has been responded, how it continue and can best support the recovery effort and help build a more resilient, competitive and future-proof Europe capable of delivering those transitions we'll focus on tomorrow. Delighted to welcome, to discuss this, Christa Sveng, President of the European Economic and Social Committee. Joining us online, we have Apostolos Tsitsikostas, who is President of the European Committee of the Region. Also joining us online, great to have with us Nadia Calvino, First Deputy Prime Minister of Spain. Here, back on stage, Natasha Tremasak, who is Minister of Regional Development and EU Funds in Croatia. François Bonneau, President of the region Centre-Val-de-Loire in France. And Martin Sandbu, European economics commentator at the Financial Times. It was mentioned, Commissioner Ferreira said at the beginning, we're in your hands. We want to hear your expertise, your experience, your knowledge. So please do use our facility in order to share that knowledge, ask your questions. You can also make brief comments. I only ask that they are genuinely very brief. If you are here in the room, you can do it the old-fashioned way. When I come out to the room, you can raise your hands and speak. Remember that, ladies and gentlemen, from 2 years ago? Or if you are online, you can go via slido.com, either scan the QR code or put in the hashtag Cohesion Forum and select the session that we're in, this one, Cohesion and Recovery. Really helps me if you put your name and organization if you're writing your question. And please be brief and please be specific to the session if you can. So as I said earlier, focusing in this one on COVID. Tomorrow we'll delve in more detail into the green and digital transformations. I've asked our panel to make brief opening remarks, and forgive me panel, I'm going to be quite tough so we have time for discussion, and then I will have some questions for you all, and I hope our audience will too. But Christa Sveng, Madam President, kick us off if you would, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Commissioner Ferreira for the invitation to join you today. For me, it's really a great pleasure to take part in this important debate. The EESC, the European Economic and Social Committee, expresses the joint views of employers, workers and civil society at large in most of EU areas, including, of course, cohesion policy. Our opinions have a particular added value. The fact that they provide, that they are based on consensus allows, of course, decision makers to really have a solid base if they take decisions. Consensus and unity in action are indeed much needed in these hard times when all the efforts to ensure economic, social and territorial cohesion at the European level were challenged not only by the pandemic, but now by this terrible war that we experience in Ukraine. We at the European Economic and Social Committee, we strongly condemned the unjustified invasion of the Ukraine, and we are calling to turn solidarity into action at all levels. And this war, yet again, is a huge asymmetric shock for the European Union after the one that has been caused by the pandemic. The whole EU will be affected by the situation, and it might bring new territorial disparities, difficulties for EU businesses, and a certain demographic change, given that almost 3 million Ukrainians have fled to the EU. The EESC fully supports the CARE initiative, the Cohesion's Action for Refugees in Europe. Indeed, it's exactly what we need. We need to care for these people. They have been forced to leave their homes, and they need our support. It is, of course, a must to welcome them decently. And in that sense, civil society organizations have a pivotal role to play. They're active from day one on the ground, providing humanitarian assistance to Ukrainians. And moreover, social partners will have to play a key role where we talk about skills, where we talk about inclusion in our labor markets. And we fully support, of course, and we are happy that exactly this CARE program was yesterday endorsed by the Council. And we need to make sure that all these tools that we have to finance the measures to support Ukraine and to alleviate this war's impact on EU's people and businesses. And our public investment through the funds from the new programming period and the Recovery and Resilience facility must help to absorb the economic, social and economic effects. Also, the REACT-EU, which the EESC has strongly supported, has contributed effectively to fostering the digital and green transitions and to deal also with the consequences of COVID-19. Some elements are important in our view. First, cohesion must help the EU to become more prosperous, digital, sustainable, and inclusive. And we need to develop our preparedness and ability to react to further challenges. We need simplification, we need flexibility in implementing these funds because otherwise they wouldn't work. And we need also to ensure coherence and synergies between the cohesion funds and the Next Generation EU. Both instruments are needed at the same time and with the same intensity. And what we also would like to see is to expand the just transition mechanism. For that, we are already working on an opinion on that, which will be adopted in the next month.
Thank you. Briefly, if you would now, Krista.
And last not least, I would like to salute and mention the partnership principle to be applied in cohesion policy. We would have liked to be that more implemented also in the Recovery and Resilience Facility. We are also working on monitoring how organized civil society is doing and consulted when implementing the RRF programs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and lots to come back on. And as you say, when you're talking about the impact of Ukraine, also that, an uneven and asymmetric shock in terms of what will need to be done to support the humanitarian effort across Europe. Lots to come back to in our discussion. Going to turn now to Apostolos Tsikostas, President of the Committee of the Regions, for some opening thoughts. Welcome, albeit remotely. Good to have you with us. Over to you.
Thank you very much, dear commissioners, ministers, president of the Economic and Social Committee, dear colleagues. The fundamental values of our union have come under attack by this deplorable, violent act of war which was pursued by Putin against Ukraine. And the war has triggered already a humanitarian crisis. This humanitarian crisis, a shadow of uncertainty, has been cast over global stability and recovery. Today, peace, solidarity, freedom, rule of law, democracy can no longer be taken for granted. And they must be embraced, defended, and promoted by all of us. So today, the discussion about cohesion is therefore about the very essence of our union, because cohesion policy is not only about European money, it is the most concrete instrument of solidarity that puts the European Union at work for those who need help, to address emergencies, and of course to boost structural change. Fast-tracking EU structural funds during the pandemic allowed regional and local leaders, as you rightfully said at the beginning, to better protect citizens and local economy. Today, fast-track cohesion funds allows our regions, our cities and villages to better welcome Ukraine refugees. And I would really like to warmly thank Commissioner Ferreira for her key role in supporting these efforts, both now with the refugee crisis and during the corona crisis. We have seen that cohesion policy is there to protect people during emergencies and to support longer-term transformations, such as the digital and green transitions. Flexibility is not in contradiction with the very objectives of cohesion. There is no structural change, if I may say. There is no resilience, no fair transition to a more sustainable Europe if, together, we don't address the unequal impact of emergencies. If we don't connect our reaction to longer-term strategies and goals. Cohesion policy proved capable to accelerate the green and digital transition on the ground, but also to support our response to crisis. The last cohesion report demonstrates how significant cohesion is for Europe. It also tells us that to reduce disparities, to boost sustainability and to face unexpected emergencies, we need all EU policies to support cohesion and take into account their asymmetric territorial impact. This bottom-up approach cannot be limited only to cohesion policy, of course. We need a more inclusive governance for all recovery investment instruments, for innovation, research, agriculture. Cohesion policy cannot be left alone to answer diverse local needs and to coordinate, if you want, the European Union, national, regional, and local actors on shared goals. we needed to expand the application of the partnership principle in other policy areas, starting with the Recovery and Resilience Facility and the Common Agricultural Policy. In order to address emergencies and longer-term challenges, we can rely on important funding still available under 2014-2020 cohesion policy programs, which must be completed by 2023, of course. Those emergencies and those challenges ranging from refugee assistance to decentralized energy production and resilience are definitely being taken into account in the shaping of the new programs 21-27, a work that is becoming even more complex but must be finalized over the next few months. And furthermore, the critical situation created by a pandemic that is not over and a war at Europe's border requires an even stronger coordination of our efforts. So in this sense, we need to do more for ensuring that cohesion policy and the Recovery and Resilience Facility complement each other. We also need to use smart specialization, bringing together universities, businesses, civil society, in all EU programs that would support innovation ecosystems and, of course, address the innovation divide.
Thank you.
We know that to face such unprecedented challenges, we can rely on an unprecedented volume of investment. But this is not enough, you know. What we need today, more than any other time, is citizens' full participation. Because otherwise, citizens' frustration will increase if we, the European Union, national, regional, and local authorities, are not able to effectively deliver public investment.
Thank you
So
very
finally,
much, Mr. President.
Yes, I'm ending. Finally, I wish to thank all the partners of the Cohesion Alliance that we have created. Even in this delicate phase, we are determined to contribute to promoting the full implementation of cohesion policy and to shaping its role beyond 2027. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Apostolos. Very interesting. Lots to come back to. You too, underlining, as Krista Sveng did there as well, this partnership principle, this inclusiveness. Talk about how we can build that even more in this programming period, perhaps. And this issue of complementarity, of coherence between long-term funds, short-term assistance. Lots to come back to in the discussion. Nadia Calvino, as I said first, Deputy Prime Minister of Spain, your opening thoughts. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Jackie, and thank you very much to Elisa Ferreira, obviously, for inviting me to participate in this very important session. Also, thank you very much to Senator Monti for sharing with us his very valuable insights, I think, about current challenges, about the lessons from history. Very, very timely, this event, I think, because as some colleagues have said, we're right now under attack, and it is not only about security and our borders, it is also an attack on our values, our principles. And cohesion policy is one of the elements at the heart of solidarity within the EU, and therefore underlying the European project. Four very brief introductory reflections from my side. First, European cohesion policy has been one of the key drivers of history in Spain in the second half of the 20th century. Thanks to the transfer of EU funds from the European budget, the country was able to undertake an unprecedented investment program, reinforcing physical, digital, social infrastructures. And I think this is a key feature that we should be always going back to, because it shows how important this is in terms of not only prosperity, but also justice, equality, and also political inclusion, an element that was brought up by Monti, which I think is very relevant. Second thought, the world has changed enormously since cohesion policy was first designed and implemented, but one thing always remains, and it is Jean Monnet's words about Europe being built on the basis of crisis. Actually, in the last years, and under the von der Leyen Commission, which I very much agree has been doing a magnificent job, we have been forced to face a pandemic, now obviously the war. In the case of Spain, in between, we also had a volcano eruption. So I can say these last years have provided us with many watershed moments, which are really changing the way European instruments are being implemented. And we have seen how cohesion policy has been a flexible instrument that has adjusted to the needs and has enabled us to have funding to respond to the pandemic, now to welcome the refugees. So I think it has proven to be an instrument that is not an instrument of the past, but actually a very, very important instrument also today and going forward. Third point, on the recovery plans, on the recovery and resilience facility. In the case of Spain, our recovery plan has 4 axes: green, digital, social and territorial cohesion, and gender equality. And I really think these 4 axes are interconnected if we want to have inclusive and sustainable growth from the economic and financial point of view, but also from the social and environmental points of view. And this is a common element of all the European agendas that needs to be well integrated. And fourth and final thought is this one precisely. We are living these historical watershed moments which are driving change and developing and deepening European integration in areas such as health, the EU budget, fiscal policy, defense. I think it is essential that we take right now the right decisions and continue to improve the functioning and the coordination of all these different instruments if we want the European project to continue to deliver on its promises for European citizens. Spain is a very good example at heart. European population is strongly, Spanish population is strongly pro-European. Spanish citizens know very well what cohesion policy has delivered to our country. And I am quite convinced that we are right now making the right decisions in order to ensure that Europe continues to deliver on that expectation, continues to deliver on prosperity, but also on the values that are driving us, which at the end of the day are the real essence of the EU. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And as you say, how to make sure you deliver on both the prosperity and the values. Lots more to come back to in our discussion. I'm delighted now to give the floor to Natasha Tramashak, who is, as I said, Minister of Regional Development and EU Funds in Croatia. Your opening thoughts, please.
Thank you, dear Ms. Ferreira, dear Ms. Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. It is my great pleasure to be here today with you and to discuss this important theme, the importance of cohesion policy. I think that we are all witnesses that the cohesion policy, not only that it can be the changer of our political, sociological, economical societies, also in these challenging times, it showed that it can be a true game changer. It can act swiftly, quickly, and to answer all the needs that we have as member countries of the European Union. What can be said about the pandemics, the first crisis that we experienced, and the initiative in the European Union, our CRE initiatives, that we all very much welcomed. It helped us move more quickly through our previous programming period. It helped us to achieve quick and important assets to help our SMEs to keep their jobs, to keep the economics still growing. Also, I think it is important to reflect on the 8th report on cohesion that showed us that even though the cohesion policy is developing the less developed regions, they are growing, they are boosting, but also the regional disparities still remains. In the new programming period, as we expect to start as soon as possible, can give us a chance now to be more efficient in tackling all of the challenges that all of the region has in the European Union. If we want for the countries in the Union and the regions to act in maybe similar speed in their growth, then we have to accept the challenges that each of them has. We have to expect for all of them to have some different views, to have some different starting points. And this is important also to discuss maybe today, all of us here that are maybe, how to say, the stakeholders, because all of us here are the stakeholders of the cohesion policy.
Absolutely. Thank you very much indeed, Minister. We'll come back on that in a little while too. Françoise Bruno, who, as I said, President of the Région Centre-Val de Loire in France. Very good to have you with us, sir. Over to you.
Merci beaucoup, grand plaisir. Merci Madame la Commissaire. Grand plaisir de vous retrouver et de porter ici, dans la suite de votre propos, la voix des régions par rapport à cette politique de cohésion. Tout d'abord, saluer le bilan. Il est comme tous les bilans, positif par le progrès qu'il marque et finalement une obligation de poursuivre, d'aller plus loin parce qu'il y a encore des marges à faire. Et quand il s'agit de cohésion, je veux saluer le propos de Mario Monti. Il ne s'agit pas de dire que nous allons boucher les trous de la route sans penser demain. Il s'agit de faire en sorte que pour les territoires qui connaissent des difficultés ou un rythme de croissance insuffisant, comme pour l'ensemble des territoires, il faut engager, grâce aux politiques de cohésion, des politiques du futur. C'est en regardant la ligne d'horizon qu'on arrive à créer l'égalité, l'équité entre les territoires et pas simplement en cherchant à recréer des conditions d'égalité formelles à l'instant où nous parlons. Les régions sont très attachées à cette politique de cohésion. Nous souhaitons bien évidemment qu'elle reste, Madame la Commissaire, au cœur des politiques de la région, avec les budgets toujours les plus élevés possibles. Parce que notre Europe, qui montre aujourd'hui à la fois ses ambitions, mais comme toujours ses fragilités, notre Europe a besoin de tous ces territoires.
It is fragile as well. Europe needs all of its areas, all of its regions in terms of human resources. As we can see today, it needs all of its regions in order to trade, in order to create, and in order to develop future technologies as well. Europe needs to show the way and face the digital challenge, the environmental transition and demographic transition. And why are the regions in France and generally in Europe very happy to take part in this forum? Well, it's because we think that through the regions it will be possible to bring the value of Europe to the citizens and to think about economic development, educational systems at a grassroots level where we hear feedback about what is being achieved. So we are fully committed to managing the European funds. We want to be able to go further tomorrow. We need to have clarification about all of this. We want to be responsible, we want to manage this, and we want to move in the direction of unity, as the other speakers have said. We think that the ambitions of Europe and the regions are vital if we are to create competitiveness, fairness, solidarity, and if we are to reinforce the basic fundamental values of Europe. Yes, today, through what I'm saying to you, I hope it's clear that the regions really uphold the European ideal, and we want to construct together this Europe for tomorrow.
As you say, that absolutely central role, and the key question now, how to make sure that in this programming period, cohesion policy can help you to do that as effectively as possible, building that competitive and future-proof Europe. Complete the picture for us, if you would. Martin Sandbu, European economics commentator at the Financial Times. Great to have you with us, Martin.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me, and I'll try to complement so many good thoughts have already been offered. I'd like to reflect a little bit on the title of the panel. Asymmetric shocks, asymmetric recovery, impact of the crisis. I think it's worth just remembering what sort of asymmetry we're talking about. We're talking about territorial asymmetry, asymmetry of place, different places doing differentially, some doing worse than others, so that not every place belongs. That is the challenge. That's what cohesion policy is there for. But it's something that needs to be focused on much more broadly than just cohesion policy. Asymmetric shocks are shocks that hit different places differently. And of course, when our organizers put together this panel, the crisis they had in mind was COVID, which was an asymmetric shock. It hit different places differently. But we are now in another crisis, and while, of course, the worst impact here is on the people of Ukraine from Vladimir Putin's illegal invasion of the country, let us also think about how it's an asymmetric shock for the EU. The burden of receiving and welcoming refugees and integrating them into local labor markets and societies falls differently on different places. The impact of higher energy prices will fall differently on different places. And I suspect that the food crisis we're about to see this year, high food prices, will also hit different places differently, including inside the EU. So we've had asymmetric shocks. The asymmetric shocks just keep coming. The asymmetric shocks come on top of what I would call asymmetric trends, and it's what many of you have been talking about already today. For about the last 40 years, we've had these trends of different places doing, some places doing well, others doing badly. In the latest cohesion report, the one fact that I want to draw out is this observation that at an average level, we've had convergence between the member states of the EU, in terms of national averages, but within countries, the convergence machine hasn't worked so well. So it works for countries, it doesn't work nearly as well within countries. And this is not just a European problem, it's nothing to blame on cohesion policy, which has compensated somewhat for that, but nowhere near enough, I don't think. I think congratulations on 5% extra GDP. We need to be much more ambitious than that. We see the same, of course, in the US and in most advanced economies. So this is a trend that's been going on, and it's one that's going to keep going on. I'll just leave it to the other panels to talk about the green and digital transition, but it's very clear that there's a risk there of that hitting different places asymmetrically, if only because of the change in energy structures, for example. So what we need then, given that picture of continuing asymmetric shocks on top of continuing and new asymmetric trends, is asymmetric policies, but policies that are consciously asymmetric in that they help to combat this, this divergence that is really what we're up against. The natural state of affairs, unfortunately, in our economy is one of divergence. That's what we have to try to correct. Correct doesn't just mean redistributing incomes. The ambition for cohesion policy or other policies is not just to compensate for income inequalities, it's to increase the productivity of the places that lag behind. Also, the ambition cannot simply be to resist or try to hold on to things of the past, what was good in the past, resist change. No, it has to be, I think, in line of what François was just saying, it has to be embrace the future. It has to be to embrace change. And that sometimes means painfully leaving things behind, leaving some traditions behind, because if we're going to really cohere, converge, the sort of things that work in the capital cities, the new cutting-edge technologies, the businesses of the future, we have to find ways for those businesses to thrive in every part of Europe and in every part of every country, also the more remote ones that have suffered over the last couple of decades. I finish by just making the point that Commissioner Ferreira made at the beginning. That's not just a job of cohesion policy, but of every policy. And I think we're in a better place politically than we've been in a long time. We realized that COVID was an asymmetric shock and acted impressively to do it with the Recovery and Resilience Fund, and Nadia was one of the driving forces behind this. I hope she will speak more about that. We have to do more of that on other policies. Let me just say the example, the Stability and Growth Pact.
Thank you very much indeed. And that question of you say, those asymmetric shocks that keep on coming. And my question really is, you've all talked about the cohesion report, and we see this mixed picture. And Commissioner Ferreira alluded to it at the beginning. Yes, some great catching up, particularly in Eastern Europe, but we see in middle-income countries some stagnating, that development trap that she urged us to make sure we avoid. And I'm wondering for each of you, and Nadia Calvino, perhaps I could come to you first in this. As you look at that mixed picture and that fragility that Francois Bonneau talked about, the fragility of the cohesion we've achieved. What for you is the biggest lesson? What do we need to do to make sure that we deal with the new disparities that COVID we've heard about, has risen up, and that we make sure the uneven impact of all these shocks, we address it most effectively? A thought from Nadia, and then, if I could, from Apostolos, and then I'll come back to our panel on stage. You're muted, I'm afraid, Nadia. The eternal words of the COVID era.
Yes, I have unmuted, so
yep,
it must
I can
be
hear you now. Thank you so much. Yep, thank you.
No, two reflections on my side, and I'm also following up a bit of what Martin was just saying on the asymmetrical impact. I was just reflecting on these two crises we have lived, have hit countries and regions in so different manners. The pandemic hit, for example, Spain more than other countries due to the exposure to those sectors that had to be stopped, tourism, and so it hit parts like the islands, you know, more than the rest of the country and the rest of Europe. Whereas now it is the eastern border that it hit more directly. And I think that now, like then, the right reply is one of unity, determination, solidarity. And I am very happy that in the response to the first crisis, the fiscal approach was one of creating the Recovery and Resilience Facility, the Next Generation EU Fund, adjusting structural funds, and you know, translating these ideas of unity, determination, and solidarity in a real financial support to those regions that were more directly hit. And I think that now, again, all of us are showing the same determination and solidarity to support our partnering countries. And my second thought would be this one. I think that the best lesson is one of realizing we're all on the same boat, now more than ever. And so there cannot be an approach of winners and losers. You know, if there is a moment when juste retour just doesn't make any sense, it is now, I think. And the second one is change. Flexibility will be of the essence, because we will need to adjust and respond in a world which is less predictable, much more unstable, volatile, and uncertain than probably what we have lived in past decades. And the EU has to then, you know, change gear and change governance to be able to stand up to these challenges.
Thank you. And Apostolos Tsikostas, on that point about all in the same boat, it has been said we're in the same storm, but the boats are different, the unevenness of the impacts that we're talking about. But I just really wanted to get your thoughts in terms of how do we make sure now that we really are prepared. I think Krista Schweng said in her opening remarks, preparedness to deal with these shocks in the future, and to make sure that we are ready, whatever they may be, the next one that comes along, and frankly, who knows these days what it will be, that we're ready to do it. Do you think we are learning the lessons of that very successful response to COVID, but for the future and to be better prepared?
Yes, we are. Yes, indeed. We are learning from our lessons. And to be honest with you, I really believe that the European Union is getting stronger and stronger after all these crises that we have dealt with. We have been dealing with crises for the past couple of years, from the migration crisis, the financial crisis before, the coronavirus crisis, and now the war, of course, that we have at our borders. But you see that every time the European Union is getting better and better, more cohesive, more united, with better responses and better results on the ground for the citizens. But of course, we have to say that indeed we are all united, we are all together, but we are all different. And we need to see all these differences that we have, see the comparative advantages that one can bring to the other. And of course, this is where exactly the cohesion funds come in, because and the role of regions, if I may add, and of cities, because we are the actors, regions and cities, not only who have the most proximity with the citizens and their real needs, but also we are the actors who can play the interlocutor between the European Union and the ground. And to be honest with you, by involving regions and cities in the implementation, but also in the design of most of the programs, cohesion programs, we can be of real help because we can see exactly what the needs for each region, what the comparative advantages, what the strengths are, and use them accordingly in these European cohesion funds. So I will tell you that yes, we are much wiser from the past, but we still have a long way to go. And this new era for Europe needs to bring the regions and the cities in the front line. Why? Not for the regions and the cities, but for the citizens. Because the European Union at the end will be the one who will gain a lot if regions and cities are supported more adequately, with more funding, and most importantly, to be a part of the decision-making mechanism of the European Union. Because by bringing regions and cities into the decision-making process of Europe, you bring citizens inside. And then we stop and start not having this frustration that citizens have about being left out of this process. They will understand, and everyone will understand, and at the end we will have a very specific result when it comes to tackling the real issues of citizens on the ground.
Thank you. And I'm wondering if also connected to this and going back to Commissioner Ferreira's opening speech when she talked about debunking myths. And one of the myths, she says, well, that this is a policy just for the poorest countries, helping citizens to understand when they come from the higher income member states, why this is of benefit to everyone. I wonder whether that is something that you, given COVID, which has hit us all, as Nadia Calvino said, what lessons do we draw? Françoise Bonneau, for you, the key lesson of the effectiveness of the cohesion policy response to COVID that we've heard about, but the lessons for the future to be ready and indeed to deal with what we now face in Ukraine.
First of all, I think we need to welcome Europe's action in the face of this crisis. They have released large sums of money for member states, for regional authorities. What I'm saying might seem to be self-evident, but this has made it possible to buy masks and to have distance teaching methods so students could stay in touch with their schools. And this is important for cohesion. This has made it possible to have links between economic chains which were working well, but which would have been destroyed if we hadn't had this assistance. So this reactivity, this action is vital. And the second lesson I'd learn is that the local regions which are part of the solution need to be at the heart of cooperation work with Europe so that they can define what needs to be built. Cohesion has had the spotlight shone on it as a result of the crisis. Before we thought about less and more developed regions. Now cohesion does cover that, that's essential, but within a region, within an area, between a city and outlying areas, we think about support for professions which are trying to take their position in tomorrow's economy.
Indeed, if you want to come in terms of a key lesson and how we will apply that to make sure that in the future, cohesion policy can keep delivering on these asymmetric shocks, which, as Martin said, just keep coming. Krista, a thought from you on that. And I want to come after that to the question of investments, and I'll also come out to the room. Don't forget, slido.com, ladies and gentlemen, if you're online and you want to ask a question or make a comment. Krista.
Thank you. Well, first of all, we have already heard it several times today. What the EU always did is growing by crisis. So every time we had a crisis, we came out stronger. And I think we've seen it with the pandemic. We've seen it with the joint development of vaccination. We've seen all that, and this is really something where we can be really proud of as Europeans. And I think this is important. At the same time, we were experiencing all the same shocks and all the same challenges that had to be met. Just mentioning homeschooling, I'm mentioning people working at distance, discovering the necessity of have good internet connections, and seeing there the need also for investment immediately. But not only that, we also saw the need for development, for the development of competences. And I think this is something, and this is the place where it's useful to have social partners, organized civil society included, because they know best on the ground what is needed in the labor market. And therefore, we think it's really important to be there and to be part of that lesson.
So that partnership approach that really is at the cornerstone of this policy for you, and you've all underlined it, absolutely central. Minister, for you, the key lesson you draw and how we apply that to deal with these uneven shocks, bumps, challenges, call them what you will.
Yes, I can be an example of Croatia while using the first financial envelope of the structural funds. And the lessons that we learned is that the more territorial and partnership approach is needed in the next financial period. While using all of the tools of the cohesion policy, there were some maybe lessons still to be learned throughout these 7 or 8 years of using this policy instrument. As a cohesion policy can be a strong building block for all of the regions and for the investments, not just to be as spending the money in some of the basics infrastructure, but what will the infrastructure be served of, how it will gain stability for the whole country. And what happened to Croatia is after these 7 or 8 years that now we are aware that the most of the available funding was going to the most developed regions. Not so much to the regions in the country that were less developed. This is something to be changed in the next period. The country was divided into two regions in the previous period. This has been changed. It's very important. It's important for the small, medium companies that are trying to invest in these less developed regions, still missing the basic infrastructure. Now, while changing this approach, we will give them the new opportunity. I think that also the pandemic has taught us a lot about how to respond more and how to utilize more of the available funds also for the small and medium enterprises. Also, the emphasis is on this partnership, not just the partnership between the institutions, between the country and between the European institutions, but also for the partnerships in the country, regions, local regional development agencies or counties, but also with the science institutions and the companies.
Thank you.
This is important.
Martin, could I just come back on what Commissioner Ferreira was talking about at the beginning when she talked about minding the gaps and tackle the traps? And she talked about this trap of middle-income countries, and you pointed to it too. We've seen some areas where cohesion policy is really delivering, but we've seen other areas where performance is stagnating, and it seems to be linked to innovation performance. That seems to be the key factor. How do we deal with that?
Well, I think this is why I tried to say earlier on that we kind of have the deck stacked against us. It's, you know, cohesion policy and regional convergence is hard because the way the economy, modern economies have developed from industry to high-value services, it doesn't really make for convergence, it makes for divergence. It's great for capital cities where you have lots of young, bright, highly educated people doing well-paid jobs. And they all want to be there, and they all move there if they have the talent. I mean, I'm caricaturing, but we see this everywhere. That's what we're up against, right? So the middle-income trap is a concept that comes from development economics, talking about middle-income countries. I think it's true even inside of countries that there's a certain, you know, you can get this far by, you know, getting a factory that will supply the German car industry, but maybe not further. Because economic growth after that depends on high-skilled, high-productivity jobs, not employing a lot of people along an assembly line. And this is what I was hinting at before, that, you know, we need to be a bit careful and avoid nostalgia.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of nostalgia in places that have been left behind, understandably enough. But nostalgia is no solution. So avoiding that sort of middle income trap strategy means that we have to really, in a sense, we have to be even more ambitious. Right? We have to want a lot of places that are struggling to be able not just to kind of move up a bit again, but to really be as attractive to the best sorts of jobs as capital cities are. I know that may sound far-fetched, but I think that's where our ambition has to be, and I think it's possible.
Thanks. If we could bring the lights up a bit, I just want to see if there's anyone in the room who wants to come in. And I want to come back, panel, in a moment to the question of what investments do we need and how do we get these synergies, this coherence going. There are some questions online. Does anybody in the room have a question? If you do, we'll bring a mic to you. I don't see a raised hand at the moment. Let me read out a few that are coming in from our online audience. Christina Larsson from Region Stockholm says, how do we get uniformity in the partnership principle? Will it be evaluated? How has it been adopted, implemented, interpreted by different member states? I don't know whether anyone can shed light on that. A comment really from Sari Rautio, who says, subsidiarity is one of the basic elements of the European Union. Perhaps this is a possibility to make it flourish again. Cities and regions have different strengths and needs, and we keep talking about the importance, the richness, and that is why the way cohesion policy is managed is precisely to reflect that diversity. And David Posenter says, shouldn't we exclude green investments financed by cohesion policy from the deficit procedure of the Stability and Growth Pact? You alluded to it earlier. What about a green golden rule? So thoughts, questions coming in. And sort of, I don't know whether anyone wants to particularly react on that, but on the question of investment, maybe we'll start there with David Posenter, because talking about green investments, for each of you, when we look at the long-term recovery, and we try to combine dealing with the short terms of impacts of COVID with that long-term, with the green, the digital ambitions, where do you think investments are needed most? And what for you is the key, and Minister, perhaps come to you this time first, the key to bringing together the synergies between those long-term investment plans, cohesion policy being a long-term tool, and those short-term reacting, REU, all the instruments we've seen, the support package that was first launched. How do we bring that together to make sure we respond both to the short and the long-term? Minister, where's the money needed most? And can we bring them together? And do we need a green rule for investment, do you think?
Yes, maybe from my point of view, most of the funds should be available to the industrial transitions of the regions. We know that they will bear all of the efforts in order for us to be more resilient, more greener, more smarter. Everything is up to the industry. What we need is to help them to achieve the goals that we asked for them to achieve. The availability of the funds for them. Strong political aims, strong, crucial impacts of what we want to achieve, but also to make them this hand of availability to help them be more faster in these challenges and in this transition. What we want to do in Croatia also throughout the smart specialization strategies, not just to have this on the national level, but also on the regional level. It is important because different regions have different needs, different resources, and building upon their own resources in the same region to continue building on the brands that they might have, helping them to achieve regional value chains, and for also trying to make after the regional value chains in the country, maybe interregional between the countries in the European Union. And also to have in mind that it is important, not just for the countries, but for the whole European Union, to keep the sovereignty in production, especially food production.
Thank you.
I think that the times are coming for us to be aware of that.
François Bonneau, in terms of where the money is needed most, where it should be focused, and also in terms of these synergies, I mean, REACT-EU is supposed to act as that bridge, the gap between the long and the short term. What for you is the key to getting the coordination, the complementarity, coherence, so that all of this money is used to deliver maximum impact?
Tout d'abord,
Well, first of all, We could say that in React EU, like in other programs in the future, the place of green investments is 30% maximum, which is devoted to this huge transition. And you're right, in the industrial sector in particular. So could this really be an opportunity for regions to create cohesion? Well, I think yes, but there are certain conditions that need to be fulfilled. Well, definitely in terms of training and skills, that's a key area. The proposals which have been made show that soon we'll have 10% fewer people working. And in a number of regions in Europe, we really have a skills crisis. So to be able to tackle the crises of tomorrow, then we need to focus on qualifications and on skills. The second challenge, which could also create cohesion among regions and harmony among different regions, it's the area of innovation. This is something which can be done at the national level, but it could also be carried out at regional level. We need to have research and development programs which could be inter-regional, especially across Europe. This is already the case in a number of areas, and we need to take this a step further.
Krista, for you, where's the money needed most, and how do we ensure those synergies?
Well, I entirely endorse what has been said. What we need is really investment in skills. We are faced with the old challenge. Now it's although it's not even an old challenge, the twin transition to green and digital economies. But where are the skills? Where are the people who can live up to to live that transition? And I think this is here where we need to invest money. This is here where we need to seek people. This is here where we need desperately migration also in order to cope with that, because enterprises wouldn't be able to deliver these twin transitions without the people, without the necessary skills to have them. So for me, this is absolutely crucial.
Central. Thank you. Apostolos, for you, would you agree with this emphasis that's being put on skills? Would you highlight other areas where the investments are most needed? And the key to this joined-up thinking, I keep pressing you on it, how do we make sure that we get the synergies, that we use the RFF, the Recovery and Resilience Facility money, the Multi-Annual Financial Framework money, that it all works together and we exploit those synergies?
This is actually a very, very good question. And we, the European Committee of Regions, have an answer to this. We believe that this is exactly the reason why regions and cities need to be more involved into the design and the implementation of these programs, because not only do we know exactly the needs of citizens and the real problems of each region, but also because we believe that we can combine and make these programs to be the one supportive to the other and not one against the other. So in my opinion, what we need to do today is synergies. Synergies in all levels, European, national, regional and local. And to be very frank with you, this is why our committee and the DG Regio has launched a joint action plan to monitor cohesion implementation, identify bottlenecks, and support fund managers on the ground. This is why we also launched a new project with the JRC and the Commission on Smart Specialization. The same awareness is guiding us in as well as in deepening the common work with the European Parliament, the EU Council presidencies on cohesion and resilience. So in other words, we need to work together. Everyone, all the actors need to know what they need to support and which area they need to work on. But at the end of the day, we all need to be working together. And this is why I want again to congratulate Elisa Ferreira. I would admit to you that we are very lucky as Europeans to, in these difficult times, to have this specific commissioner responsible for the cohesion policy.
Thank you very much indeed. Nadia Calvino, I mean, we talk a lot about synergies. It's a coherence, coordination, impact, maximizing impact. It is easier to say than it is to do. What for you is the key here to making sure we use all these instruments coherently, and where would you focus the money?
Yes, I think that actually, can you hear me?
Yep, perfectly.
So I think that we actually got the recovery and resilience facility quite right when we said a high percentage has to go to the green transition and also to the digital transformation. Since others have spoken about green, I would like to stress that probably digital transformation investment is really matching short-term needs and long-term objectives. And we need to invest in infrastructure and technology, in the economic tissue, and in people. I very much agree that digital skills are absolutely essential if we want the young and especially also women and the most vulnerable citizens to have access to the jobs of the future, to the public services of the future, to the society that is being built, whether we like it or not, and that has accelerated exponentially as a consequence of the pandemic. But my second point would be to stress that we also need to invest in our strategic resilience, our strategic autonomy, with projects such as the ones that are being driven by the EU on semiconductors, but also electric and connected cars, renewables, green hydrogen and storage, the circular economy, the agro-food industry. I think that these cybersecurity, we need to identify these strategic priorities and then invest in a coordinated manner in order to reinforce the resilience of the EU. And then finally, how to make this match and how to reach those synergies. I think a key word is flexibility. I already said it. It is through the ability to adjust fast that we will be able to make all these instruments row in the same direction and achieve the objectives we have in the short, medium and long run.
Thank you. And I just want to put to you and then also to Martin this suggestion from our audience about what about a green golden rule? Should we exclude green investments financed by cohesion policy from the deficit procedure of the Stability and Growth Pact? A quick thought, if you would. It's not one for a quick thought, really, but...
I had avoided replying no, but this is brought up in each and every of our meetings in the Eurogroup, in the ECOFIN, and the green is a case at hand. I would also argue for digital, obviously. Some other countries argue for defense expenditure. In the past, other countries argued for education. So I think this is a very relevant discussion, one that goes beyond fiscal rules. Yeah. It is more of a political dimension and a vision for Europe in the future. But whatever we do and whatever the solution is, our fiscal rules need to enable the EU invest in its resilience and strategic autonomy going forward. I think this is a clear lesson that we will need to find a way to sort out in the upcoming months and in the different discussions.
Thank you, and sorry to put you on the spot on that thorny question. A reaction, Martin, from you on that point, but also Alison Hunter asked, the EU's new growth model is not addressing underlying disparities. The new urgency of energy transition, she says, means best in class will benefit most. How to avoid this? So this issue, and we'll come back to it in the green transition discussion tomorrow, of this, the risk of creating new disparities is enormous as we move forward. How do we avoid that?
Yeah, I'll follow up on what Nadia was saying, because I think how to make these things coherent over time, how to match up the short term and the long term and so on, is the solution isn't really technical or even institutional, but political. Right? So the other thing that the EU got right in the Recovery and Resilience Facility was that and the other instruments that were put in place at the same time, it made all the national capitals feel, okay, it's safe to start to put money into these investments. We're not going to be slapped with an excessive deficit procedure or worse, or some sovereign bond crisis a year down the line. And, we should remember the trauma from 10 years ago. It's not just that we need to invest for the future. We have 10, 15 years of underinvestment to catch up with. I mean, there's a lot of investment that's needed. So, how you do this technically and institutionally in the Stability and Growth Pact, the green golden rule idea is a good idea, it's sensible, but of course it's not just green, It's digital, it's skills. I mean, they don't count as investment in a national accounting framework, technically, but they are clearly important. So, you know, once you start listing all these things, it starts to look a bit incoherent. You get contributing states saying, well, this is just going to be used to game the rules and so on. So what you really need is some system of trust that we can identify the sort of spending that's actually good for fiscal responsibility because it creates sustainable growth. Now, you don't do that with a simple rule. You probably don't do that with a sort of list of types of investment. Maybe you do something a little bit like what's been explored in Next Gen EU and the recovery plans, where there's this sort of back and forth and a shared ownership between what spending is okay. We want, you know, we want people to invest in the things that benefit other countries, like energy interconnectors, gas and electricity interconnectors. So there are clearly things that we should all be able to agree we need, and then create the political confidence for all levels,
But
local,
also,
national, and EU.
I'm hearing, so that key, one of those key elements, particularly in the new policy, of flexibility and being able to use funds in a coherent way and move funds and use them together. Francois, for you, can I just come back on that point? How important for you as a region is this flexibility, this increased flexibility that you have? And just, I don't know whether you can pick up on the partnership principle and how well you think it's working. Does it need to be uniform across the EU, or is this something where a tailored approach, member state by member state, is the right way to do it?
Well, member state by member state, but also local authority by local authority, region by region. That's what we're talking about now in European construction. So how we can adapt these programs across regions. In my region, for example, sometimes I need to talk about the car industry. Well, what do I need to do? Well, I'll work with the last business producing car parts in my region. There might be another one somewhere else in Europe, and I'll make sure that the innovation goes into that plant. And I'll make sure that we'll be able to concentrate all our sources on that plant. So this is something which is incredibly important. On industries, I think regions are very attached to their industries. So we know that industries are a way of balancing out development in the regions. And this is something which really needs to be at the heart of what Europe is doing for regions and local authorities. So we need to have an overall vision. We need to have a process which is based on openness and exchange. I think we need to work on a large car industry for Europe. We need to have cars for the future. We need to have hydrogen involved. So we could try to build all of this together. We could use our innovation and research bodies. And that's work that can be carried out in regions within our ecosystems. Thank you very much.
Hi, Martin, and I do want to put you all on the spot. Sorry, I'm going to go in reverse order to the way I gave you all the floor for your remarks. And this is very unfair, I know, but Nadia Calvino said we are at a watershed moment. There are many watershed moments, but this is a particular watershed moment. We heard Commissioner Ferreira talking at the beginning about how those key challenges that we need to address. And you said, Natasha Tremashak, cohesion policy can be a true game changer. So for each of you, and I'll start with Martin, and then, as I say, in reverse order of the way we started, if you had to identify in 1 minute, this is really unfair, a key priority, the most important thing we need to do to make sure that cohesion policy can continue to build on the achievements of the past, but meet the challenges of the future that we're discussing, what for you is the key? 1 minute each. I'm sorry, it's brutal. Martin first.
I will just give an example of what I think we need to try to achieve, and whether it can be done within the framework of cohesion policy, I'll leave the experts to determine. But it's this. In the pandemic, we've all had a crash course in remote working. Suddenly, all these high-value service jobs that concentrated in capital cities, we've been talking about this, could be done from anywhere. What I'd like to see is a strategy at regional level, at national level, at EU level to say, can we use this as a policy lever to actually encourage some of those jobs to congregate less? Can smaller places, can we make it attractive for the young professional couple with children to move back to where the grandparents live because they can actually take those jobs there now? And in that way create a critical mass of high knowledge future jobs in left behind places.
I think we'll
Very few are doing it. Please try to think about this.
Linked to one of the issues we're going to discuss in the breakouts later, smart specialization, and how each region can identify its unique opportunities, its unique strengths, and capitalize on them. François Bonneau, for you, key priority.
La priorité.
Well, the priority is about human resources. I was talking to it about initial training and also lifelong training. We need to use digital tools to support people in acquiring skills. This is something which was at the heart of Jacques Delors' policies. I'm sure you'll all remember it. I think it's absolutely vital. We need to try to build equality between the regions, and it will also give Europe its confidence back. It's very important for young people and also for people who want to adapt to this period of transformation and transition.
Okay, well, in 1 minute. Place-based approach, tailor-made approach, listening more to each other, national level, regional levels, industry, especially focus on this transition, green, energy efficient, smart, and also together with reskilling of the workers. Together, it can be achieved.
Thank you so much. In much less than a minute, very comprehensive. Nadia Calvino, your key priority.
It's very difficult.
I know.
But I would say we need to make sure that all citizens feel that they and their region matter.
Thank you very much indeed. Very succinct, very clear. And again, we're going to have a session on a Europe closer to its citizens, a breakout, so we'll delve into that in more detail there. Apostolos Tsikostas, your key priority, key next step.
Simply, 3 words: flexibility, synergies, and bottom-up approach in order to tackle the real issues of the citizens.
Thank you so much. And Christa Sven, you have the last word.
I like that, thank you. Well, transitions require resilience, and resilience can be gained by empowering people. And empowering people means investing in their skills and mindsets. And I think this is exactly what we need to do. Thank you.
And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, those of you in the room, we can finally, after so much time of online where we couldn't show our appreciation, would you please show your appreciation to our panel for a great discussion. And thank you to those of you online for contributing with your thoughts and with your questions. So, before we go, panel, thank you. That was terrific. You've raised a lot of issues, a lot of things that we will need to focus on in more detail in our discussions today and tomorrow. We're going to take a 30-minute coffee break, and then at 5 o'clock sharp, the breakouts will begin. For on-site participants, you can see a reminder of which workshop you registered for on your badge. S1, A Europe Closer to Its Citizens, will be in this room, the Gold Hall. S2, Smarter Europe, Smart Specialization Strategies, in the Copper Hall, way down there and at the bottom. And S3, A More Social and Inclusive Europe, will be in the Silver Hall. For online participants, on Swap Card, go to the Program tab and click on your breakout session. You can also take advantage of opportunities to network with fellow participants online, use the coffee chat to talk to each other in writing about the 4 key themes we're addressing here, or go to the list of participants, find someone to link up with, fix a meeting, make those connections. And tomorrow, we start again at 9:25 sharp. We're going to have speeches from the President of the European Parliament, from the President of the European Commission, from the French presidency, from 2 distinguished professors, and we're going to have panels on the green transition and on the digital transition. And then at the end of the day, we will hear from Commissioner Ferreira again. I wish you very fruitful discussions in your breakouts, and I'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 9:25. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.